6 women, 2 from Ucanalis, 2 from Guayastums, and 2 from the Salmon Coast Field Station, all located in the Musqueam-Zawadanoc territory, came together to build a split cedar cabin. In the spring of 2016, Billy Proctor and Yvonne MAXIMCHUK released their book Tide Rips and Back Eddies, which included instructions on how to build an old hand logger's cabin. We decided to follow Billy's instructions to see if we could build a split cedar cabin like the one he recreated on his property, using only hand tools and a chainsaw. Billy's instructions came from his memories of exploring the Broughton Archipelago and coming across old cabins that loggers used to throw up in a matter of days. They are made in a way reminiscent to the way our ancestors built their cedar structures. We started out building using just the instructions, but luckily our location was close to Billy's house and he came out every day to see our progress and help us. Lucky us. So here is how we built a 10x10 split cedar cabin. The building materials you will need are a handsaw, at least 2 steel wedges, about 8 plastic wedges, a clawfoot hammer, a 14-inch froe, a shovel, a yew-wood mallet, a chainsaw, 8 pounds of 2.5-inch nails, 5 pounds of 4-inch nails, 1.5 pounds of 6-inch nails, a 3-pound sledgehammer, an 8 or a 10-pound sledgehammer, a tape measure, dog lines, ropes, an axe, a pry bar, a come-along or a winch, and a ladder. For making shakes, you will need a cedar log that is old growth, a minimum of 4.5 feet across, has no knots on 3/4 of it, and if there are knots, they can only be on one side and only take up 1/4 of the log. Your log can be hollow in the middle up to 2.5 feet. In fact, that can be better, because you only use the outer 12 to 14 inches for the shakes. It has to be a total of 50 feet long, or you can have 2 sections of 30 feet. The color should be light to medium brown. It cannot be dry, dark brown wood. To build the foundation of the shack, you will need 3 cedar logs that are 10 feet long and 8 to 10 inches in diameter. We built our cabin by the ocean, so we got our logs there using water transportation. To get our logs to our site, we used a lot of dog lines and ropes to tow them up onto a nearby beach. If this is your method, time your log gathering with the highest seasonal tides to get them as far as you can up the beach. You will be working on your logs at low and medium tides so you don't get wet. When choosing a location for your cabin, keep in mind where you want your door and window to face. Choose ground that is already flat or that can be dug to be as flat as possible. Clear away any brush. Lay your 3 cedar logs that are 10 feet long and 8 to 10 inches in diameter parallel to each other and as level as possible. Use a measuring tape to square the logs by making sure the distance from the top right corner to the bottom left corner is the same as the distance from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. If a log is not quite flat or is sticking up, just dig under it until it lays flat, or place a wood block underneath it. Stuff as many cedar boughs as you can in between the foundation logs and under the floorboards. Now for the floor. For a 10x10 shack, you'll need about 10 to 12 floorboards that are 2 inches thick and as wide as they will split. To split your floorboards, you first need to split your log lengthwise. This splitting technique will be used to split all of your wood needed. To split your log in half, you will need your 2 thick steel splitting wedges, several plastic wedges, and a sledgehammer. Take a steel wedge and tap a line along the wood where you want your split to follow. A split will always follow the line that you tap. Tap the line like this, and not like this. The line has to be straight and unbroken. The line should be 1/2 inch deep. Drive in your 2 steel wedges in the top and bottom of the line. As the log starts to split, add in plastic wedges in the cracks and drive them in. Tap wedges in a bit at a time so that there's equal pressure from each wedge. Soon it will start splitting down the sides. Place wedges in the cracks and drive them in until it splits all the way to the bottom. To stop a split log from rolling onto you, block the log beneath the side you're cutting on. We found the best splitting wedge was an old axe head. Split each of the 2 halves in half again so that you have 4 quarters. Use the same splitting technique to split off your floorboards. They need to be 2 inches thick and as wide as possible. Remember, tap a line where you want your split and then drive in your wedges. The core of the cedar is called the heartwood. It's sometimes distinguished by a darker color. This needs to be cut out because it doesn't make good planks. And now for the floor. Nail planks directly onto foundation logs using 4-inch nails. Trim off the sapwood, which is usually light in color and carries the sap in the tree. It needs to go because otherwise it will rot. Trim off bumps so planks will fit nicely together. Nail down the first plank on one side and nail each subsequent plank against the previous one. You will have to trim them as you go to make them fit nicely. The walls are made of 2 tiers. To build the bottom half, you need to split the rest of the 10-foot blocks into 2-inch planks, and then split again for 2x4s, for the studs and rafters. It doesn't matter if they're not perfect. They might come out 3x3 or 2x3. Take 4 of the 10-foot boards for the floor plates, and nail them around the perimeter of the floor. Once all 4 are nailed down, use the handsaw or chainsaw to trim the ends of the floor planks and foundation logs to create a flat face to nail the shakes onto. Decide where you would like the door to be and how wide you want it. For example, we made ours 2-ish to 3-ish feet wide. Then you can saw the bottom plate to make space for the door. To make 3-foot studs and braces, start chainsawing the big cedar log into 4-foot long rounds. Use the same splitting technique. Make a line halfway across the block to split in half, and then into quarters. Take off the heartwood. To make studs, start splitting 2x4s. Remember, they don't have to be exact. You'll need a total of 8 studs that are 3 feet 2 inches long. Use your handsaw to trim them to length. To place your stud, flatten off an area using your hatchet where your 2x4 stud will sit on the floor plate. Stand the 2x4 as straight as you can on the flat spot. Toenail it in with the 2.5-inch shake nails. Do this in each of the 3 spots along the floor plate. Place one of the 10-foot 2x4s and nail it across the top of the 3 studs using 4-inch nails. Try to make sure the studs are as straight as possible. Once you've done this to each wall, make 15 braces with any 4-foot pieces that are not thick enough to be good studs. Measure the brace from the middle of the 2 studs, and you can use a nail to mark the angle on the stud before sawing it off. Sometimes you'll have to flatten the spot where the brace will be. Use 2.5-inch nails for securing the braces. To split shakes, you need a froe and a U-mallet. To make the U-mallet, get a good-sized U branch and cut into about an arm's length and carve it down into a club. We used U because it's a very dense hardwood. To make shakes for the walls and for the roof of the cabin, you will need to chainsaw a 4-foot section of log for the walls and a 2-foot section for the roof. Start by splitting off the heartwood. Then stand the froe onto the block with the blade down and hit with the mallet. Hold your froe very still, which makes it easier to make it even. Make your shake 1/4 inch thick. Start the split closer to the handle where you have more control. Drive the froe down until it becomes flush with the top of the block. Tip the handle towards yourself and shove it down again. Repeat this 3 or 4 times until it pops off. And then take off the sapwood. It's way easier to split cedar when it's wet. So split when it's raining or pour water on your block. Nail shakes to the open end of the foundation logs first with hand-sawn shorter shakes to close in that lowest section and to prevent drafts. Nail shakes on in a barn fashion or double row. Use 2.5-inch nails both on the top and the bottom of the shake unless the shake is very wide, and in that case use 3. Shake the entire tier of the wall except where your door will be. The double row prevents the shakes from curling up and leaking. Repeat these steps for the second tier, starting with nailing the 2x3 studs into place, and then securing the 10-foot 2x4 lengths using 4-inch nails across the top. And then brace them. For this you'll need 8 more studs and 15 more braces. If you want a window, decide where it will be and don't shake that space. Use a modified 2x4 to create the frame to place the window in. Take a shake and place between the 2x4s and nail it in. Place the window on top and use a small piece of cedar to secure it in place. For the roof, you will need 3 or 4 10-foot long 2x4 ceiling joists. Nail the joists across from one wall to the other. Use the walls that do not have the door built in. You will need 10-foot rafters, some studs for the gabled ends, and a ridge pole that is at least 10 feet long. The length of the rafters depends on how steep you make your roof. Allow at least 14 inches extra on the ends for the eaves. Place 2 studs with bracing in the center of the 2 opposing walls and nail the ridge poles securely. You might want to use your hatchet to carve out a space at the top of the studs for the pole. Brace the ridge pole using modified 2x4s on each end. Nail rafters evenly and opposite each other along the ridge pole. The strapping needs to cover at least 13 feet. You can use the 10-foot 2x4 studs with additional 3 or 4 pieces sawn to length. The short pieces are easily joined by nailing them to the rafters. To measure how far the next strapping should be placed, take one of your 2-foot shakes, place it so that 1 inch is hanging over the first strapping, and place the next strapping underneath so it's flush with the shake. You can set the strapping in place as you nail on the shakes starting from the bottom of the roof moving up towards the ridge pole. It's important to leave a minimum of a 1/4 inch gap between each roof shake because as temperature and humidity rise and fall, your shakes will expand and contract. Make sure that the gap is covered by 2 inches on either side by a second layer of shakes. Layer each row of shakes with 3 inches overlapping the one beneath it and put 2 nails in each end. Use remaining shakes to fill the gabled ends. How to make the door. Build a rectangular frame using 2x4s that fit the space for your door. Nail a shake on each end, make sure it's square, and then nail shakes to it overlapping them. Use leftover cedar pieces cut to size to block the gaps between the tops of the walls and the roof. You can use moss or other types of natural fibers found in the area to stuff in small gaps. Use cedar pieces to fill gaps in the floorboards, and you're done. And that's how you make a split cedar cabin.